The massive transport ship broke through the clouds of planet Nexus, its metal hull gleaming under the purple sunlight. Inside, Marcus Reed stood among dozens of other human workers, all hired by the Galactic Mining Corporation for their unique abilities to work in harsh conditions. At 32 years old, Marcus had spent the last decade working on various space stations, but this was his first planetary assignment. "Remember," the blue-skinned corporate officer announced, "you are here because humans have proven themselves capable of surviving in conditions that most species find challenging. But do not, under any circumstances, venture into the Western Territories." Marcus noticed how the alien officer's 4 eyes widened at the mention of the Western Territories. The other workers whispered among themselves, but Marcus remained silent, his curiosity piqued. He had heard rumors about the Western Territories, tales of massive beasts that even the most advanced alien civilizations feared. The settlement they arrived at was impressive, a sprawling complex of domed buildings and processing facilities. Marcus was assigned to maintenance duty, responsible for keeping the mining equipment running in the harsh environment. The work was demanding but straightforward, exactly what he had expected. What he hadn't expected was meeting Director Lyra. She was different from the other aliens he had encountered. Her species, the Astrians, were known for their logical approach to everything, their silver-tinted skin, and their natural ability to communicate with the native fauna of any world. As the director of the mining operation, Lyra was respected and feared in equal measure. Their first interaction came 3 weeks into his assignment. Marcus was repairing a ventilation unit when an alarm blared through the compound. Through the reinforced windows, he watched as something massive moved in the distance, a dark shape that seemed to block out the purple sun itself. "You should be in the shelter," a melodic voice said behind him. Marcus turned to find Director Lyra studying him with her iridescent eyes. "I needed to finish the repairs," he replied, gesturing to the half-fixed unit. "If this fails, the whole section could overheat." Lyra tilted her head, a gesture Marcus would later learn indicated surprise. "You show no fear of the behemoth?" "Should I?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "From this distance, we're safe behind the barrier shields, aren't we?" A small sound escaped Lyra, something between a laugh and a sigh. "You humans are fascinating. Do you know why we hired your species for this operation?" Marcus shrugged, tightening the last bolt on the unit. "Our adaptability to harsh conditions, right?" "Partially," Lyra said, moving closer to the window. "But mainly because your species has something we lack, the ability to see beauty in what others fear." The behemoth moved closer to the perimeter, and Marcus could now make out its features. It was enormous, easily the size of 3 transport ships, with armored plates covering its body and multiple limbs that seemed to shift between solid and ethereal forms. Yet instead of terror, Marcus felt amazement. "It's magnificent," he breathed. Lyra's silver skin seemed to shimmer. "That's exactly what I mean. Every other species sees a monster. You see wonder." She paused, her eyes fixed on the creature. "I have a proposition for you, Marcus Reed. One that might change everything we know about the behemoths." As the alarm continued to wail and the massive creature prowled the perimeter, Marcus listened to Lyra's proposal. Neither of them knew it then, but that conversation would spark a chain of events that would challenge everything the galactic community believed about the fearsome beasts of the Western Territories, and about the limits of understanding between different species. The behemoth's roar echoed across the complex, but Marcus barely noticed. He was too focused on Lyra's words, and the incredible possibility they presented. Maybe, just maybe, fear wasn't the only way to approach these magnificent creatures. Maybe there was another way, a human way. And so began the story that would eventually be told across 1,000 worlds, of how a human's unique perspective helped bridge the gap between civilization and the most feared creatures in known space. But first, Marcus would have to survive what Lyra was about to propose, an adventure that would take him deep into the Western Territories, where no one had ever returned from before. The next morning, Marcus found himself in Director Lyra's private office, a sparse room with walls displaying holographic images of various creatures native to planet Nexus. The behemoth from yesterday featured prominently among them, its massive form frozen mid-stride. "The behemoths are dying," Lyra said without preamble, her silver skin catching the purple sunlight streaming through the reinforced windows. "And with them, the entire ecosystem of the Western Territories is collapsing." Marcus sat straighter in his chair. "Dying? But they seem unstoppable. That's what makes it so puzzling." Lyra moved to stand before the largest hologram. "These creatures have survived for millions of years, adapting to every challenge. But in the past year, their numbers have dropped dramatically. We've found several dead, with no apparent cause." She turned to face him, her iridescent eyes intense. "My species can communicate with most creatures, but the behemoths, they're different. Their minds are too alien, too complex. We can sense their presence, their general state, but nothing more. Yet yesterday, when you watched that behemoth, I sensed something I've never felt before." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "It noticed you," Lyra said simply. "Not with fear, not with aggression, but with curiosity. In all our records, that's never happened before." The implications made Marcus's head spin. "So what exactly are you proposing?" Lyra's skin rippled, a sign of excitement in her species. "I want to send an expedition into the Western Territories. Not to study the behemoths from a distance as we've always done, but to make direct contact. To understand why they're dying and try to prevent it." "And you want me to go?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "Yes. Your human perspective, combined with my ability to sense their basic state, we might succeed where others have failed." She paused, her voice softening. "But I must be clear, this is incredibly dangerous. No one has ever returned from deep in the Western Territories." Marcus stood and walked to the hologram, studying the behemoth's features. Despite its fearsome appearance, he could see patterns in its design, a strange beauty in its otherworldly form. If these creatures die out, what happens to the planet? "Total ecological collapse within a decade," Lyra replied grimly. "The behemoths maintain crucial biological processes we barely understand. Without them, Planet Nexus would become uninhabitable." Marcus thought about the mining operation, the thousands of workers who depended on it, the unique purple world that had already begun to feel like home. Then he thought about the behemoth's curious regard yesterday, so different from the mindless aggression everyone claimed these creatures possessed. "When do we leave?" he asked. Lyra's skin glowed brighter, a reaction Marcus had never seen before. "Tomorrow at dawn. We'll take a small stealth vessel, just the two of us. The fewer people we risk, the better." As Marcus left her office to prepare for the expedition, he caught Lyra watching him with an unreadable expression. There was something in her iridescent eyes that seemed almost human. It made him wonder if perhaps there was more than just scientific curiosity driving her desire to save the behemoths. That night, as he packed his gear, Marcus watched another behemoth patrol the perimeter through his quarters window. Its movements seemed less threatening now that he was really looking. There was a grace to them, a purpose he hadn't noticed before. Tomorrow, he would either make the discovery of a lifetime or meet a fate that had claimed countless others before him. Strangely, the thought didn't frighten him. Instead, he felt a growing excitement. After all, humanity had always been driven by the desire to understand the unknown, to bridge gaps that seemed unbridgeable. And now, alongside an alien who saw something special in humanity's perspective, he might help save an entire world. As the purple sun set on what might be his last normal day, Marcus made a silent promise to the behemoths of the Western Territories. He would approach them not with fear, but with wonder. Not as monsters, but as magnificent beings worthy of understanding. He just hoped that would be enough to keep him alive. The stealth vessel glided silently over the twisted landscape of the Western Territories. Marcus sat in the co-pilot's seat, watching as the familiar mining complex disappeared behind them. The terrain below changed dramatically. Gone were the regular rock formations of the mining zone, replaced by strange, spiraling structures that seemed to defy gravity. "Those formations," Lyra explained, her hands steady on the controls. "They're actually fossilized behemoth trails. From thousands of years ago. Marcus leaned closer to the viewport. They created all this? Yes. Their movement patterns alter the very geology of the planet. That's one reason their loss would be catastrophic. Lyra's skin dimmed slightly, a sign of concern, Marcus had learned. Suddenly, their vessel's sensors lit up with warnings. A massive shape moved beneath the clouds below them, bigger than anything Marcus had seen at the complex. Lyra quickly landed their vessel on a high ridge, powering down all non-essential systems. We need to observe first, she whispered, though the behemoth was still kilometers away. This is closer than anyone has ever gotten to one without being attacked. They watched in awe as the creature emerged from the cloud bank. Unlike the ones near the complex, this behemoth had patterns of bioluminescent light flowing across its armored plates. Its multiple limbs moved with impossible grace for something so large, and its form seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. It's beautiful, Marcus breathed. Then he noticed something odd. Lyra, look at its movements. Does it seem injured to you? Lyra's eyes narrowed. Yes, its right side is moving irregularly. I'm trying to sense its state, but... Her voice trailed off as her skin began to pulse with a soft light, her species' way of concentrating. Marcus kept watching the behemoth. Its movements became more labored as it approached their position. Then, without warning, it collapsed near the base of their ridge, its massive form shuddering. We have to help it, Marcus said, already reaching for his environment suit. Lyra grabbed his arm. That's suicide. We came to observe, to understand. It's suffering, Marcus cut in. You can sense that, can't you? Lyra's skin rippled with conflicting emotions. Yes, but... Then we help, Marcus said firmly. That's what humans do. We see something in pain, we help. Even if it's dangerous. He pulled on his suit before Lyra could protest further. To his surprise, she quickly donned her own suit and followed him. They descended the ridge carefully, approaching the fallen behemoth. Up close, the creature was even more magnificent. Its armored plates shifted colors like oil on water, and Marcus could now see that its bioluminescent patterns were actually complex symbols that changed constantly. The patterns, Lyra whispered through their suit comms. They're similar to my species' skin language, but infinitely more complex. I've never been close enough to see them before. Marcus approached the behemoth's head, or what he assumed was its head. The creature's many eyes turned to focus on him, each one a swirling vortex of colors. He expected to feel fear, but instead, he felt recognition. Lyra, he called softly. Can you sense anything? She moved closer, her suit's sensors whirring. It's not attacking. It recognizes us as intelligent beings. But there's something else, pain, yes, but also. Before she could finish, the behemoth's form rippled, and a small object fell from between its plates. Marcus carefully picked it up. It was a crystalline growth, pulsing with a sickly light. That's it! Lyra exclaimed. These crystals, they're not natural. They're killing them. The behemoth's eyes fixed on Marcus as he held the crystal. Its pattern shifted, and Lyra gasped. It's trying to communicate, she said, her voice filled with wonder. It's showing us. Marcus, there are more crystals. They're spreading through all the behemoths. But this one, it recognized that we want to help. It trusted us enough to show us what's wrong. Marcus looked up at the massive creature, meeting its swirling eyes. We'll find a way to help you, he promised. All of you. The behemoth's patterns pulsed once, and Marcus felt a wave of gratitude. The sensation was so alien yet unmistakable. Then the creature slowly rose, its movements already smoother without the crystal, and moved away with surprising grace. As they watched it disappear into the clouds, Lyra turned to Marcus. You were right, she said softly. Sometimes the human way, helping first, questioning later, it works better than all our careful observations. Marcus smiled inside his helmet. We make a good team. Your knowledge, my instincts. Yes, Lyra agreed, her skin glowing brightly even through her suit. But this is just the beginning. Now we know what's killing them, but we still don't know why, or who is responsible. Back in their stealth vessel, Marcus studied the crystal under a portable scanner, while Lyra piloted them deeper into the Western Territories. The crystal's sickly pulse seemed to grow stronger as the sun set, casting an eerie glow throughout the cabin. These readings don't make sense, Marcus muttered, adjusting the scanner's settings. The crystal's structure, it's artificial, but it's also somehow alive. Lyra's skin rippled with concern. Alive? That's impossible. Unless... She fell silent, her iridescent eyes widening. Unless what? Marcus pressed. There's an old story among my people, Lyra said slowly, about an ancient species that once tried to control the behemoths. They failed, but the legends say they created living weapons, crystals that could bond with any creature and bend it to their will. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. You think someone found their technology? Before Lyra could answer, their vessel's sensors blared a warning. 3 corporate security ships appeared on their radar, approaching fast from the direction of the mining complex. They followed us, Lyra hissed, her skin paling. But how did they? She stopped mid-sentence, staring at the crystal. The crystal! It must be broadcasting a signal! Marcus quickly wrapped the crystal in his suit's radiation shield, but it was too late. The security ships were closing in. Director Lyra! A stern voice crackled over their comm system. You and the human are in violation of territorial restrictions. Return to the complex immediately. Lyra's hands tightened on the controls. Security Chief Reed, this is a sanctioned research mission. No, Director, the voice replied. It's not. The board never approved this expedition. Return now, or we'll be forced to take action. Marcus looked at Lyra, seeing the conflict in her eyes. They knew, he said quietly. The company knew about the crystals all along, didn't they? Lyra's skin darkened with anger. The mining operation, it was never about minerals. They're harvesting these crystals, using them to kill the behemoths so they can claim the Western Territories. A warning shot from one of the security ships lit up the sky in front of them. But before anyone could react, a massive shape burst through the clouds beneath them, the behemoth they had helped, its bioluminescent patterns blazing like a constellation. The security ships scattered as the creature rose between them and Lyra's vessel. Its patterns shifted rapidly, and Lyra gasped. It's protecting us, she whispered in awe. And it's calling others. As if in response, more behemoths emerged from the clouds, their massive forms illuminating the darkening sky. The security ships looked tiny in comparison, like insects before giants. Chief Reed. Marcus grabbed the comm. Look around you. These creatures aren't mindless beasts. They're intelligent, and they're dying because of those crystals. Whatever the company's paying you, it's not worth destroying an entire species. There was a long pause. The behemoths moved in a complex pattern around them, their lights creating a mesmerizing display that seemed to tell a story of pain, betrayal, and hope. Finally, the chief's voice returned, softer now. The board, they said the crystals were just tracking devices. That the behemoths were a threat that needed to be contained. I never knew. Help us expose the truth, Lyra urged. With your evidence and ours, we can stop this. Another pause then. Get to the planet's primary communication array. I'll make sure you have access. The whole galaxy needs to see what's really happening here. As the security ships turned back toward the complex, Marcus and Lyra shared a look of determination. Around them, the behemoths continued their dance, their patterns now showing something new, trust. You know what this means, Marcus said, holding up the shielded crystal. Once we expose this, the company will do everything they can to stop us. Lyra's skin glowed with fierce determination. Then we'll need help. She looked up at the behemoths surrounding them. From all our friends. The largest behemoth moved closer to their vessel, its swirling eyes meeting Marcus's gaze. In that moment, he understood what Lyra had meant about seeing beauty where others saw fear. These weren't just creatures to be saved, they were allies in a fight for survival. And somehow, A human's ability to look past fear had helped forge an alliance that would change everything. The communication array stood like a silver spire against the purple horizon, its surface reflecting the last rays of daylight. Marcus and Lyra's vessel approached cautiously, flanked by 3 behemoths who had insisted on escorting them. Their massive forms created moving shadows across the ground below. "More company ships approaching from the east," Marcus reported, watching the radar. "They're not even trying to hide anymore." Lyra's skin flickered with determination as she piloted them closer to the array. "The board must have figured out what we're planning. But they're too late, Chief Reed's access codes are still working." Their vessel landed at the base of the array. Through the viewport, they could see teams of corporate soldiers taking up positions around the facility. The behemoths responded by forming a protective circle around their landing site, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with warning signals. "The crystal," Marcus said suddenly, studying their specimen. "Its pulse is getting stronger. There must be more nearby." They donned their environment suits and stepped out onto the planet's surface. The corporate soldiers held their positions, weapons ready but not firing. They seemed unsure about confronting the behemoths directly. "Director Lyra!" a voice boomed across the open space. A sleek corporate shuttle descended, and from it emerged board member Drake, his expensive suit incongruous against the harsh landscape. "Think about what you're doing. The profits from these crystals could make us all wealthy beyond imagination. At the cost of genocide?" Lyra called back, her voice hard. "These creatures are intelligent, board member. They're part of this planet's ecosystem. Without them, everything dies." Drake's face twisted with contempt. "They're resources to be used, nothing more. Humanity understands this, don't you, Marcus? Your own species built its civilization by dominating nature, not preserving it." Marcus stepped forward, feeling the eyes of both the soldiers and the behemoths upon him. "You're wrong. We learn from our mistakes. True strength isn't about domination, it's about understanding, about finding a way to coexist." As if in response to his words, the largest behemoth lowered its head to his level, its swirling eyes meeting his gaze. The creature's patterns shifted into a complex sequence that made Lyra gasp. "Marcus," she whispered, "it's showing us something, a path. Underground. There's a whole network of crystals below us." Drake must have realized something was happening. "Open fire!" he commanded. "Stop them before." But the behemoths moved first. They raised their massive forms and began a synchronized movement that made the ground itself vibrate. The corporate soldiers stumbled, their shots going wild. The very earth beneath the array began to crack. "They're helping us expose the truth," Lyra realized. "Not just about the crystals being used against them, but about all the crystals the company has been hiding." The ground split open, revealing a vast chamber beneath the array. Thousands of crystals pulsed with that same sickly light, their glow illuminating mining equipment and research stations. The evidence of the company's true operation lay exposed for all to see. Marcus quickly connected their scanner to the array's transmission system, broadcasting images of the hidden facility across the galaxy. "Look at this," he transmitted. "The Galactic Mining Corporation isn't just mining, they're weaponizing ancient technology, committing genocide against an intelligent species." The behemoths continued their earth-shaking display, but now their patterns had changed. They were no longer showing anger or warning, but rather something more complex, a story, told in light and movement, of their history on this world and their desire to share it peacefully. Drake screamed orders, but his soldiers were transfixed by the display. One by one, they lowered their weapons. Even Drake fell silent, watching as the behemoths demonstrated just how wrong everyone had been about them. "It's done," Lyra said softly, her skin glowing with triumph. "The transmission went through. The whole galaxy can see what's happening here." But as Marcus turned to smile at her, a movement caught his eye. Drake had pulled out a personal weapon, and it was aimed directly at Lyra. "If I can't have this world," Drake snarled, "no one will." The shot rang out across the newly exposed cavern. Marcus moved without thinking, pushing Lyra aside. He felt a searing pain in his shoulder as the blast hit him instead of her. As he fell, he heard Lyra scream his name, saw the behemoths react with a fury that made the sky itself seem to tremble, and then, darkness. Marcus awoke to an unfamiliar ceiling and the soft hum of medical equipment. His shoulder throbbed with a dull ache, but the searing pain was gone. As his vision cleared, he saw Lyra sitting beside his bed, her silver skin glowing with relief as she noticed him stirring. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." Marcus tried to sit up, memories flooding back. "Drake? The behemoths?" "Drake is in custody," Lyra assured him. "After you were shot, the behemoths, they did something extraordinary." Her skin rippled with excitement as she recalled the event. "They created a barrier of pure energy around him, containing him until authorities arrived. No one had ever seen them use their abilities like that before." Through the medical bay's window, Marcus could see the familiar purple sky of planet Nexus, but something was different. Massive shapes moved freely near the complex, their bioluminescent patterns creating dancing lights against the clouds. "The broadcasts work better than we could have hoped," Lyra continued. "The Galactic Council saw everything, the hidden crystals, the behemoth's intelligence, Drake's confession. They've declared the Western Territories a protected zone, and the behemoths are now recognized as a sentient species with full rights." Marcus smiled, watching the creatures move with their characteristic grace. "And the mining operation?" "Transformed. I've been appointed to lead a new joint research initiative." Lyra's skin brightened. "We're working with the behemoths now, not against them. They're teaching us things about this planet that we never imagined. Their communication patterns, they're not just signals, they're a record of this world's history going back millions of years." A familiar massive form appeared outside the window, the first behemoth they had helped. Its patterns shifted in what Marcus now recognized as a greeting. "They've been waiting for you to recover," Lyra explained. "They want to show us something. Think you're strong enough to stand?" With Lyra's help, Marcus made it to his feet. They walked slowly to the observation deck, where the barrier shields that once kept the behemoths out had been replaced with transparent viewing panels. The great creature moved closer, its swirling eyes level with the deck. Its patterns began to shift, telling a story in light and color. Lyra translated, her voice filled with wonder. "They're showing us their true purpose. The crystals we found weren't weapons originally, they were tools for communication, for connecting different species. The ancient civilization didn't fail to control the behemoths, they succeeded in becoming their partners." The behemoth's patterns shifted again, more complex now. "They want to teach us," Lyra continued. "They say humanity's ability to see beyond fear, to reach out in friendship even to those who seem dangerous, it reminds them of their old partners. They want to restore that connection." Marcus placed his hand against the viewing panel, and the behemoth responded by touching its massive form to the other side. A warm sensation flowed through him, carrying feelings of gratitude, friendship, and something more, a sense of potential, of a future filled with incredible possibilities. "You know," Marcus said, looking at Lyra, "when I took this job, I thought I was just going to be fixing ventilation units." Lyra's skin shimmered with amusement and affection. "And instead, you helped bridge the gap between species, exposed the conspiracy, and changed how the galaxy sees these magnificent creatures." She moved closer to him. "Though I suspect the behemoths aren't the only ones whose heart you won." Outside, more behemoths had gathered, their patterns synchronizing in a spectacular display of light and color. They were no longer the terrifying beasts of legend, but partners in understanding the mysteries of their world. Their story would be told across the galaxy, not as a tale of fear and conquest, but as proof that with courage, compassion, and an open heart, even the most feared creatures could become the most trusted allies. As Marcus stood there, with Lyra beside him and the behemoths painting the sky with their lights, he realized that sometimes the greatest discoveries weren't about finding new worlds or advanced technology. Sometimes they were about finding new ways to understand each other, about seeing the beauty that others missed, and about having the courage to reach out in friendship when others would turn away in fear. The human who had won the heart of both an alien director and the most feared creatures in known space smiled, knowing that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. A beginning of a new chapter in the history of Planet Nexus, where humans, Austrians, and behemoths would work together to unlock the mysteries of their shared home.